Hello, everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager for HGA, and today I get to be your host. Today, I want to thank our sponsor from the Hudson Mohawk Weavers Guild. We really appreciate them coming in and giving the sponsorship today. You can learn more about them at hmwg.org. We welcome your questions as always. Please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. We love your chats. Those are great, but I can't see those, but I can see the questions, and we'd appreciate all those questions. Today, we have Eric Frisino. Eric started his career as a graphic designer and developer. In 2016, he decided to switch paths, and he joined his wife, Tegan Frisino, in growing their own weaving business, Comfortcloth Weaving LLC. He saw that she had a need for lots of color in her work, but was struggling to find suppliers for the kind of material she wanted. He taught himself how to dye different types of yarn like cotton, silk, linen, wool. And then he had to scale up for larger production. And while he was learning to dye, he also began weaving rugs. For upscale, larger production, he contributes a significant amount of his time to not just dyeing or weaving, but also developing and fine-tuning designs and colorways for clients' projects and new products. Eric's current project is building a small mid-scale dye house so he can accept various types of dyeing jobs to provide his service to local regional mills, farmers, yarn companies, and other artisans looking for custom dyeing services. Hi, Eric.
Hello, how are you?
I am great. Welcome. I'm glad you're on here.
Yes, me too. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. So the most important question of the first one, what is your favorite tea?
So if we're talking hot tea, I like a good peppermint after dinner. If we're talking about a daily, I've got just a normal sun tea that I carry around in an Nalgene with me most of the time. And those are my basically my two teas. Your
go-tos.
Yes.
All right. So if you would talk a little bit, I've talked some in your introduction, but talk a little bit about how you got started in fiber.
So it was sort of, I guess 2010, 11-ish. I kind of knew that I was headed towards fiber in some way when one day at school, Tegan said, you know, I think I've come up with a name for my weaving business. And I was like, all right, here we go. So it took until about 2016 when we really got it like up and running. And then it was probably another year of finding suppliers and figuring out our product sort of repertoire and all that kind of stuff. And then we sort of realized that the things we wanted to make weren't totally doable with just what we could buy fiber-wise already dyed. So, and we found that to get what we wanted was way too expensive. So what we ended up doing is that we found a supplier who supplies just tons of natural colored materials in all different sizes and different sort of types, so like bouclés and all that kind of stuff, and then figured out that buying from them in bulk would be cheaper than buying already dyed material, and it would allow us to do all of the colors we wanted. So what I did was I started, like you said, started dyeing, doing just tons of research and learning. And then once I was doing that and really kind of settled into the dyeing portion of it, I started adding weaving rugs because we had clients who wanted rugs, and Tegan really had no interest in rugs. She likes the finer stuff. And so I took that on because while I can do the fine stuff and I'm good at it or okay at it or whatever, I really don't like the fussiness of the fine work. So, you know, too many threads to warp a Loom. It's just like too much for me. So I like my 4 to 6 ends an inch with the rugs, and the kind of bulkiness that I get from them. So I really jumped in on the rugs, and that's kind of how I, ended up weaving.
Well, one of the things I've found since we've been interviewing people is that a lot of people are kind of a circular path, or it's not a straight from point A to point B. Let me say that. And you're kind of the same, because you didn't start out to be a weaver or a dyer, right? You had a whole other, path you were taking. Can you talk some about that?
For sure, yeah. I mean, so when I went to school, I've got 2 degrees. One degree is in, hang on one, I'm just gonna see if I can adjust this camera quick so it stops freaking out. There we go. Okay, so there it goes. Okay, whatever. So I have 2 degrees. The first degree I have is in programming, writing software, and then the second degree I have is in communication design and ostensibly printmaking, but it was more like paper making for printmaking. So my education, in a way, while I got it, what it did for us was it helped us get seed money, basically, right? I went and got a job and worked in programming and design for like 7 or 8 years. I was running a marketing department and all that kind of nonsense. And the sort of the funds that brought in, and then the sort of my work from that kind of informs how I design and work now. I take a lot of those concepts, like my design concepts and my sort of thinking programmatically, and apply that to things like dyeing, or as we work through designs for different products. My sort of design philosophy is everything you need and nothing you don't. So what we do is we sort of start with way too much, all of the ideas in there, and then we start pulling out and pulling back and getting rid of this and getting rid of that, narrowing down colors, and then eventually we end up with whatever the product is that we are trying to make. And I think that, between that for me and what Tegan brings to it, we end up with some pretty, I'm biased, obviously, but we end up with some pretty cool designs that I don't think we would end up with otherwise. Oh, I can't hear you.
That was me. I think I got kicked off for a minute, and I'm back. So I apologize. Okay. As you can tell, for those of you watching, I'm not at home. So this will be interesting to see how this goes. So thinking back to when you first started weaving, and this may not apply to you at all, but did you kind of, when you first started weaving, did you think, oh, I think I can do this. I think I like this. Or was it more of a pragmatic kind of, no, this will work and this will be fine? Did you have an aha moment with it?
So with my very first weaving, actually, I had watched Tegan for 2 years up to that point go through the fibers program at Buff State. And
right.
I was like watching her, and I think that if you asked her this question, she would agree that I have this annoying ability to watch people do things and mess up, and then, mark that as a little checkbox of something not to do. And then
that would be annoying.
Yes. Yeah. So when I had to take fibers as an elective for my craft requirements, and when we got to the weaving portion of the class, I was just excited to do it because that's what she was doing. I knew I could get some help. And I just sort of really jumped in. I designed a plaid, and then I dyed all of the yarn for it. And then I wove this beautiful scarf, and to no end, it still annoys her. But for me, that was just like a fun distraction from the all-nighters that I was pulling, working on massive branding projects and stuff for the communication design. So I was just like done with that, back into my other work. And it didn't really click for me until I realized that other people liked my work and that they would actually pay me to do that work. And when I thought, oh, I have this opportunity to work with my hands and play with color and make something concrete, because 90% of what I did as a designer was just, you know, I make something digital, it goes off into the world, and it's just like digital ephemera on a hard drive, which has no concrete real value or anything. So what I did sort of feel when I started weaving rugs for clients and stuff and doing the dyeing work was that I was actually making something again. I was back to making concrete things that people can hold and feel and love or hate or however they feel about them. But that those people liked it enough that they kept coming back. So that was sort of my like, oh, I can make a little money. So this is awesome. So I think I probably would have ended up somewhere doing something with my hands. What that was to be determined until I found it. But I found it in weaving and dyeing.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a great, I mean, just that the idea of one is a concrete thing and one is not. I hadn't thought about that, but that is really true. That's a huge leap for you.
Yeah, and it was so like before I went to college, before I even got out of high school, I loved doing things with my hands. I took photography classes in college where we were still actually shooting on film. We were winding bulk film off. We were doing all the developing, all that kind of stuff. It became faster when I was able to shoot digitally and edit in Photoshop, but that wasn't the same thing. I don't have like a stack of, you know, photos that I exposed myself. So I think that there's sort of the drawback to the physical and concrete was what drew me in.
Well, we have a couple of images of your rugs, and they're just amazing. Can you talk some about how do you choose the pattern for these rugs? Because the one on the right, I'm assuming, was this a show?
Yes, so this is a show, and actually I don't even know. I think that we sold those rugs so fast I didn't even get photos of them, because I have a couple on the loom and then I've got a couple in the booth, and that's all I've got. But the one on the right, actually, it's what's on the top left of the rack there, and that rug is something that when I joined, I was looking to make rugs that were somehow sustainable and somewhat quick to make for retail. And I found this company, I'm not sure, they're in the Carolinas somewhere, and they rescue cotton extras and junk that is typically headed for the landfill. And they make mostly mop yarn out of it, and you have to buy it by the pallet. And so I bought a ton of it and I started dyeing with it. It takes dye amazingly, and so it was forgiving in the beginning when I was trying to get solid colors. And I just did these kind of simple designs that I thought were graphic enough to go in someone's home, but still had like not so nice that they wouldn't walk on them, you know, not so fine that they wouldn't actually use them.
Right.
And that was sort of my first foray into retail rugs. And then I did a lot of, and have absolutely almost no photos of, horse spun rugs. I did those for a long time for lots of different farms and individuals who had flocks and stuff, which was great. And it was fun to do. I still do them from time to time. I think the last one I did was for Christmas, and it was like 8 feet by 12 feet, size wise. So I do a lot of those, and they're pretty quick to do and really fun because you get to make like a nice fluffy rug that's like massive when it's done. But the one there on the left is one that I just designed one day while I was trying to figure out something to do. And this is just one that I made, will probably end up in retail, like at a show or something. There is one problem with it, and it's that I ran out of that kind of goldenrod color. So I don't know if it'll end up at a show or, you know, it might just end up in my bathroom. But this is just a 3-end block that has there's a big stripe down the center of it where it's the opposite block from the two sides, so that I can weave it in that way and then have it stripe up in blocks like that. I like playing, this one is really symmetrical, but typically I like to play with a little bit of asymmetry. I have another one that I'm working on right now, actually, that is more like up to the first block is black, and then it sort of fades in a couple inch increments up to a bright color, and then back to black for the rest of it. So I like to play with sort of really simple designs with solid colors, and then it becomes kind of more about the color than the design. So I like to play with ideas, and then typically when I do stuff like this, if I post it or things like that, you know, we get some client work from that kind of stuff, but I mostly just do them for people who custom order them at shows or get a hold of us via other means to do rugs. And that's kind of why there's so little of my stuff, because I like take a picture on my phone quick to send them before it goes out. They approve it, and then it gets in the mail.
Well, you were talking about that you're starting doing shaft switching, right?
Yes. So
Can you talk some about that?
Yeah. So really kind of as soon as I realized that I could make rugs, and I was like decent at it, I got into how can I design rugs? Like what's the best way for me to be able to design a rug? And mixing the sort of graphicness with the with not being so confined to like I guess not a symmetrical pattern, but like a pattern that I can create on the limited number of shafts that I have. And so I went to Harrisville and I tried out their shaft switching loom, and I made this piece here with the diagonal. And about halfway through it, Tegan got bored and left. She was like, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go do something else. So she came back and I was done with it. And you know, I fell in love right there. And then some quick back of napkin math, quickly realized that it was impossible for me to afford that particular loom at this point. And I have not yet found one on like the resale market for looms. But I'm always looking for a good deal because I'm a poor weaver. So hit me up if you know of one. But I did last fall. So I've been slowly incrementally working my way towards getting set up for this. I got a Varpa last summer, and which is just it's now the Toika. I got a Varpa Finlandia, which I believe is now the Toika Lisa, and started learning how to do the blocks, getting the threading done, just dialing in so that you can't see the second color on the bottom and that kind of stuff. Just really getting technical and fussy about the act of weaving itself. And then last fall, I had the opportunity to acquire a Glamocra standard loom. And as soon as I have space, that's going to get set up, and I'm going to put shaft switching on that, hopefully. So I don't know if you'd like me to explain what the switching is all about.
Yeah, if you could just give a brief overview for people who've never heard of it.
Okay, so you can see on the right side of that picture there's a bunch of string, and under that string, there's little bars that flip back and forth, and those bars move the connection of like move the where the warps are threaded from the third to the fourth, or from the fourth to the third harness. And when you lift, it will lift those in a different order. So when you're throwing your shuttle, you throw every other color, or every other pick is a opposite color. And when you do that, it moves those in such a way that you can make these kind of color fields that change the whole time. So you can, after every set of 4 throws, you can flip it, and then you can change whatever your top color is to your bottom color. And I believe that the Harrisvilles are in 1/2-inch increments, I think, for their blocks of color are 1/2 inches. But I'm not 100% sure on that right now. I wanted to, so like my ultimate goal with this is to figure out how to get those down to like a 1/4 inch, so I can get even more resolution into it.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
I started by, behind this curtain here, I've got a 3D printer, and I've started to print little like shaft switching things, just like little hooks that I can put on a Macomber, so that I can practice some of these ideas just on a little 24-inch Macomber and see if they're actually going to work or not before I go trying to make like a massive piece of wood and a million little switchers to realize it doesn't work. So I'm sort of starting small and working up. And it just, it takes time. We're busy doing client work and other things. And, rugs are sort of time intensive.
Yes.
And sometimes prohibitively expensive for people to just be able to come to a show and purchase. So I do most of my work for commissions.
Well, that was one of my questions for you, is that I've heard from other artists that commission work can be difficult at times. And I'm curious for you, how do you balance making the client happy and at the same time listening to your own artistic perception of what you're doing?
So that's an interesting, really good question. I feel like I have enough work that if our ideas don't align, then there's probably another weaver out there that would like to do what you want me to do. And that is, we sort of have set up our commission work in such a way that we weed out the people who don't really want us to do their work. We so for say at shows, we do, you can have anything in the booth, any color, any pattern, any size. That limits everyone, like customers, to see what's in the booth. We've already got it designed. We know we like making that pattern and those products. So that keeps us pretty narrow into what we'll do commission-wise from shows. But then there's also people who want to work with us in a different kind of capacity, where, for instance, larger commission orders that want several yards of fabric, or they want very specific thing to go with their business or something, and in that case, we charge by the hour for design, which says to them that we're taking this seriously, and so should you. You should come to us with concepts that are well thought out, because you're paying us to do this. And if you don't, you're just going to pay us more ultimately, which is fine with us because we're doing the work, we're getting paid. And then we move into a sample phase after that. This is the same for rugs and for our finer materials. We move into a sample phase. We charge a flat fee for each round of samples. And you get a pretty solid, you get good for your money for that. And then from there, we move into final product. And by the time we get to the final product, we know that you are either going to pay us on time or you're not by that point. They've had plenty of opportunities to do that or not do that. And then we also know that you're serious and committed and willing to wait for the kind of quality product that you're going to get from us. So we sort of have this kind of vetting process that builds like built into the system. That there's plenty of opportunities for people to say, you know what, this isn't going to work. We're out. We have lots of opportunities for that. We don't actually sign a contract until we are at the point of creating the final product. And then, that's sort of that weeds us out enough. That's sort of taking care of all of the Sunday shoppers, if you will.
That's an interesting way. I don't think I've ever heard anybody kind of talk it through that systematically. That if, especially the part about you kind of know when they're going to be sincere and really invested or not. That's an interesting way of doing it. And kind of shifting gears, you and Tegan have a podcast called the Professional Weavers Podcast. How did that get started? And if you all haven't seen it yet or listened to it yet, put it on your bucket list. You've got to listen to these podcasts. Even though it's about professional weavers, it has something for everybody. So there's a little commercial for you, Eric. So if you would, tell us how that got started.
Well, I do appreciate it. And I second all of those things that you said. The podcast was an interesting thing for us. Before the pandemic, I was working on recording a podcast with all my maker friends, people who are serious craftspeople in many different areas, potters, jewelers, woodworkers, anything you can think of, furniture makers. And my thought was that, at the time I felt like there wasn't really any sort of outlet to talk seriously about your work in a way that was very honest and included business. I didn't want to have just a theoretical conversation about why you make pots. Like, that's not interesting to me. I want to get into it. And so I was working on that, and then I got busy. Work started picking up for the business, and somewhere buried on a hard drive is probably 20 episodes of that never even got edited, because the fun part for me was actually doing the interviews and talking to people. And so I just did a ton of interviews and then never did anything with it. But I don't know, it was kind of a weird time, right? I mean, we came back from ACC Baltimore, and within a couple weeks, every show for the year was canceled. And we were, and it wasn't like we hadn't lined up a bunch of wholesale work during that time, because we were going to be out of shows. I mean, we already had our time budgeted for shows. So we didn't have a lot of wholesale work during that period to fall back on. And then, so we were just sitting around panicking, I guess, like everybody else at that point. And we were thinking about, well, what could we do? Because what we didn't want to do was sit around and do nothing, because it would have been easy to watch TV and eat ourselves fat during the pandemic. And so we gave ourselves a project. The project was do something for the community. And what are we going to do for the community? And the community service kind of project for us was that we were going to do a podcast. So we raced, I guess, everyone else to buy equipment and, get set up. And then we started reaching out to, at first, weavers we knew, some that Tegan had taken classes with, people we had connections to from shows and stuff. And we got going and sort of put a proof of concept out. And then that made it much easier for us to contact, cold call, essentially, other weavers who we really admired their work or thought that they had possibly something to offer the community. And I think there's probably only a handful of weavers who the timing didn't line up, or they were no longer really interested in weaving, had moved on, things like that. And you know, it just sort of took off in a weird way that we didn't expect, because we were just doing it for ourselves. And then when we started going back to shows, you know, people started coming and being like, oh, I heard you were going to be here, so we came to check out your work. And it was an interesting thing because we started hearing back from the community of weavers who, because I was, you know, I'm like immediately like, okay, well, tell me about your work. We don't need to talk about us. You hear enough about us. So we really got a real cool insight into the community and what people are doing in their studios, because it is such a solitary craft. And it's not really, you know, there's kind of a lack of widespread information about actual studio practices of weavers. It's hard to be a weaver on your body. It's hard to make money as a hand weaver. It's hard to sort of maintain that over the long term without some support from someone. So we thought that if you're sitting in your studio and you're feeling lonely, or you're just curious about other weavers, it'd be something that you could listen to while you weaved. And we just saw, you know, we did it until we literally didn't have time to do it anymore, because we just started, like, you know, just the way everything shut off in a week, everything started up in a week. You know, it was like everybody was like, okay, well, I'm getting clients back to my website. I'm getting people back in my store. We need, you know, 100 yards of this. I want to order a few blankets. I want to do this. So we were just like, okay, I guess it's going back to work. And then what happened was we have a bunch recorded right now that are just waiting to be edited. And we sort of intermittently edit and record. So at some point we're going to have like a couple of 6 or 8 week seasons, and we'll put out little chunks at a time, so that it's not like the pressure of doing it full time again. Because during that time that we put it out, it was basically our job, and we could put lots of time and energy into it and make it what it was. And we don't want to like put out half of what it was, you know. We want to keep that there, that sort of level of quality there. So we're still working on it. It'll be back at some point, and you know, it'll hopefully be as good.
Well, one of the other things that I think happened for everybody during COVID, but it's just the nature of your job, is working from home. I think we all started, well, not us, but a lot of us started working from home. But I was curious, not only do you work from home, but you work next to your spouse. And at the end of the day, you know, y'all are still in the same place and next to each other still. How have you all dealt with that? How do you manage to have limits or boundaries or timeouts or whatever you need?
For sure. Yeah, so that is really a pretty serious issue, you know, about like something you have to take seriously, not like a serious issue, but it's like something you really do have to think about and plan for. I was lucky in a sense that I worked from home for several years before I started working from home for myself.
Okay.
During that time, actually, I sort of came up with basically the golden rule of working from home, for me at least. And I tell anybody this that asks, and that is that if you're going to work from home, you definitely have to have boundaries. The way that I set up my boundaries were that I had a room in my house that was my office, and that room was for work. And when I went to work, I went into that room and I closed the door. That's where I worked. At the end of the day, when the day was over and I no longer had to be at work, I left the room. And that room was essentially a contained box with all my stress and annoyances from work in it. Just like you leave the office and you go home and you relax because you're not surrounded by the office and all of the jerks contained therein. You have to do that for yourself in some way. Whatever that way is to create that boundary, you have to create that boundary. And so that I had that lesson going into working with Tegan. And when I went into working with Tegan, we sort of had to say like, there's a couple rooms in the house, because at that point we lived in a much smaller house that we had purchased, not realizing totally that we were going to grow so much in it. And we had the bathroom. Well, I guess the bathroom was technically our dive room. So we had the bedroom and the kitchen, were basically the two rooms that if we're in those rooms, we're not doing or discussing work. If we're in the other rooms and we happen to start talking about that kind of stuff, then that's fine. But we try to avoid it, too much in the evenings and weekends. And then when we moved, we were actually able to create an office where I'm sitting now upstairs in our living area. And then we put our entire studio in the basement. So when we come out of the basement, we like to try to leave work there. Now, the fact that you are working in your house with your spouse means that that is more of a practice than a hard, fast rule. It's a practice because sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes, in the evening, we're sitting pulling shibori, or we're doing something that we really don't want to be doing, but we have to do it because, who else is going to do this to make the money? So we do run over with that. And a funny little thing that happened, I don't think it made it into the podcast, but when we were doing the podcast, we had Daryl Lancaster on, and we were chatting with her about hobbies versus work, and how the only thing we know how to do is figure out a hobby, turn it into a job. And that's not totally healthy. But we did mention to her that, I dabble in guitar and percussion, and Tegan is a well-trained flute player. And Daryl said to us one day, well, maybe a hobby could be that you guys play music together. And my initial reaction to that was, we already do enough together. And I think that at some point, you also have to realize that you do enough together, and you can draw boundaries where you don't have to be involved in that aspect of somebody else's life. Even if you do love and care about them like no one else in the world, I don't have to be part of her flute playing. She is really good at that, and I commend and support her in that. But also, that's not something that I have any interest in at all. And she is free to play until her heart's content, wherever she wants, and be good at that thing without me. So it's
let's shift gears. Let's
balance.
shift gears again, because I want to talk some more about your dyeing. We touched on that earlier, and we have some images. I'm all over the place. Poor Mandy's trying to keep up with me, but we have some images of your dyeing. If you want to talk a little bit more about how it sounds like that has really become a big part of the business now. It started out small and now it's really big.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We during the pandemic, we didn't have a lot of weaving work, and I was decent at dyeing. So we started dyeing for some other people here and there. And then I got a job at, actually, we both got jobs at Bat and Kill Fibers and a local spinning mill. And I, during my time there, started doing dyeing for them and doing a lot of their clients' work, and realized that I could actually do this and scale it up. So, that is sort of, when you're thinking about weaving and trying to do it as a job, there's X amount of time that you can physically put into weaving, right? And then you're tired, or your body gives out, or whatever it is, your hip or your shoulder, your elbow, or whatever. And you can only make money while you're weaving. And then when you're not weaving, you're not making money. So what we saw dyeing as an opportunity to sort of scale up how we could make money, because we can dye a small vat or we could dye a big vat. And as we dye more big vats, we can add another vat to the line, and then we can continue to grow and make more money. And so it was sort of a way to get us back into weaving, like to sustain us through the end of the pandemic. And while people were getting online and jobs were getting set up and okayed. And then we sort of, a couple of big dye houses went out, and there was kind of a little bit of a vacuum in the market. So we've been working with companies to try to get them back online. So we're doing, like you see here, finished skeins, so that people can order this much yarn here. This is so this is about 40 pounds of yarn here that you're looking at. And in order to get that dyed and spun in the individual colors, it would be very expensive. And it would probably take a long time because you'd have to go to a small mill that would do like 10-pound lots or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm offering a service of dyeing after it's into yarn. And this is just after it's come out of the centrifuge. So it's still wet and hasn't been snapped out. But they all get snapped out and hanked up before they go back. So they're nice skeins. And so I do this. And then on that other slide that you had there with all the cones, so this is our line of yarn. This is all local yarn to us from local farmers that we get spun at Battenkill, and then we dye up. The right shelf there is from 2 farms. We know all the sheep. We know that they've been treated well. And, it was kind of a really cool project to be able to do, to go from the sheep all the way through spinning and dyeing. And then we've made product out of it as well. And that's been a big seller, and people love it. So we're going to continue to do it. But I'm just having a ton of fun playing with colors and sort of learning about how they mix and all that kind of stuff. And now we're getting into painting, and we're taking the science of dye, because it really is. I mean, it's like step by step. It is a science. And once I sort of learned the rules around which that has to take place, exactly what you have to do, the temperatures, the pH, all that nonsense, then it sort of opened me up to being able to dye things that were more organic and creative and one of a kind, as opposed to being stuck to a more rigid woven structure. Not that I feel, that's not to say that weaving isn't beautiful in its own right, and that wovens that are that way aren't as valuable or whatever. We really do love pattern and playing with pattern and dialing them in and figuring them out and all that. But the creativity that comes when we can do something like weave just plain weave with substitute threads for shibori, and then we can dye that twice to get some kind of crazy organic pattern. That is where the dyeing gets really fun. Or in something like this blanket behind me, where we dip dyed and then we wove it all. We dip dyed the weft and wove it into just a white warp, and it creates this kind of like flowy, watery pattern. And getting to the point where I'm good enough at dyeing to be creative like that is really the most fun part about doing the dyeing, because once I figure it out for us, then I can say to a client, well, look at this stuff that we can do. Let's do some really cool, fun project for what you want.
Yeah. Well, is this image from a show? I take it that.
Yes. Yep.
With all the shelves. Okay.
Yep.
All right. That blanket is pretty amazing. I'm glad you talked about that. I'm sure it's in the questions.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting. Right there, you can kind of see it's plated twill that Tegan, I don't know if she designed it or found it in a book, so don't quote me on that. But it looks like a weaving when you can fully see it. It looks like one thread going over top of another thread in kind of check pattern. And we just really loved the pattern and then wanted to do something fun with it. So we decided, we did this colorway, And then we did another colorway that was purple and bright green. And then we did a dark and light orange. And we did kind of a foresty, mossy, dark and light green for another colorway.
That's amazing. Now, one more thing, we're running out of time here. What I wanted to ask about you, the maker of parts for the loom. I thought that was pretty impressive. We have images here of you got a loom, right? And you didn't have the second back beam, right? So you made one, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I think that being able to kind of iterate and make on the fly is really super important, because we're on like these tight deadlines with like the slowest possible production that you can have. And sometimes things break or you need a part, and just paying the shipping is like 10 times what it'd be to make something. So we've got a couple 3D printers, and we've got a full wood shop, and we've got enough of a metal shop to do some damage. So so what you're seeing on the top there is a towel that was done at a different set. And then we needed to add to make a piece wide enough for a client. So we needed the second back beam. And what happened first was that what you see in that top picture, that metal nipple there was actually printed out of plastic. And over time, over a couple of weeks of Tegan weaving on it, it just snapped right off, because it's holding, as you can see in the bottom picture, all the weight and then also the tension. And I just kind of didn't really think about it that much. It was more of like, I got to rush and get this done. So I made it and glued it up with epoxy and then stuck it in there, and it worked to get the project out. And then we had all this extra warp on it. We were just going to keep going with more products, and it busted. So what I ended up doing was I put a metal piece in, instead of, I drilled out the hole where the plastic nipple was, and I put this metal one in. And I think it's important. I wrote a blog about this. If anybody wants to check it out, it's on our website in pretty deep detail. But I think it's important to be honest about I think always it's good to be honest about failure, right? Because that's where you're really learning the most. But also about the iterative process of doing some of these things. Our woven pattern design is iterative, and all the way through to our making tools and parts and things. And so I wrote it up before it broke, and then I added another chunk after it broke. So you can kind of see the progression of how the project went. And I think that really most people who weave a good amount are either handy in this way or have someone in their life who is handy in this way. Because this started for us like the moment we got our first loom. We were like, okay, we've got a little bit of an issue. We need to do this. We need to do that, just to make it more production friendly. So this has been going since probably 2015 or so, when we really got into this for real. And it just sort of culminated in this project recently, but it's almost a daily occurrence. I mean, especially with AVLs, they are great looms. And when you work them hard, and we don't have new AVLs, we've purchased all our AVLs old, and we love every single one of them for the weird thing that it is. And they just, after you weave, if you weave on them 8 hours a day for how many years, they're going to get a little out of square, or, there's going to be some wear and tear on them. So we do, on the AVLs and Macomers, we do the most work, because I think those are the two looms that we work on the most as well.
Well, you know what? We're going to start looking at questions. How's that?
All right. That's perfect.
We got bunches. Do you use, what kind of dye? I knew everybody's going to want to know about. What kind of dyes do you use?
So
is it
right
natural,
now,
synthetic?
Yeah, so we're using synthetic dyes. We're
Okay,
currently just using standard Prochem and Dharma acid wash fast dyes
okay,
and reactive dyes. But I'm in the process right now of working with a chemical company, dye chemical company, to move to dyes that are all approved, like good for the environment, or I guess not bad for the environment. We're moving to
okay.
saltless dyes and totally neutralizable. I mean, right now we're just putting it into our own septic. So that is high on my list. Not that it wouldn't be if I was, into a city septic, but it's easier to like not worry about salt as much.
Mhm.
But we're just dumping into our own system and that water falls into the water table and then we drink it again. So I'm very conscious of that, but we would not be able to, the requirements of the dye that we do are not met by natural dyes. We do every now and then some fun natural dyes for like a one-off project or somebody wants a small thing, but we need to be able to repeat this color next year, the year after, 6 months later, for people who want to buy, maybe add to their collection. They already have bath sheets. They want more bath sheets that match. They have hand towels they want to add to their hand towels, things like
Mhm.
that. And then also now clients who are spinning yarn, they have yarn lines that they need to match. So the chemical dyes really give us that ability to sort of meet the market demands.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Barbara Fornoff wanted to know, is there growth in weaving with younger craftspersons pursuing weaving, both as a business, as an art? Do you see that happening?
I do actually. I think
Oh,
one of the
good.
really great things that for me personally that came out of the podcast was seeing that there was a massive younger community that into weaving, interested in weaving, partaking in weaving in any sense, from just a rigid heddle that they use in the evenings to full-blown businesses that they run. I think that there is this thing that uh, the older generation of weavers as either will have to grapple with at some point or will ignore to the point that guilds are no more. Because I think that in a lot of the guilds, and this is the feedback that we get privately from people, that a lot of the guilds are older people who are they're closed into their guild. They may share, but they don't share as much as the younger people do or as readily as they do. And I do think that that is like the guild system. I love the guild system, and our guild is actually amazing, welcoming, great. I'm on the show and sale committee. My wife is on the program committee. So, I mean, they I feel like are maybe like an outlier in this regard, at least from what I hear. But I really do think that anyone who's an older weaver, and this includes me as I mature and get older, um, really should be looking out for the younger people and
Mhm.
encouraging them and offering anything that they can or feel like they want to those younger weavers to help them really get into weaving and advance themselves and get better and move this whole sort of this whole weaving profession forward, because there's way more work than there are weavers, and you just have to get into it to find that out. And there's no reason we need to be competing with each other or closed off about really any aspect of it. If you're a good weaver, your voice will come through and you will be able to tell that that is work of that weaver. So I feel like we should, I can't remember the question, but I think we should all sort of come together a little more as a community and build each other up and promote each other and all that kind of stuff. Because it's only going to help. A rising
Yep.
tide lifts all ships. And so let's pump that water in,
Yeah, yeah. Well, several people are asking about, do you sell your yarn that you dye on your website?
So right now it's not on the website. I
Okay.
am currently, the hope was actually like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, whenever we had originally talked about doing this, um, that I would have the new website up. I've, because I'm a programmer and I don't want to lose all that, I've been, I work on our own website quite a bit. And so I can like stay in shape mentally with it. And we've got a new website coming. We've got not only our yarn line that we produce with Bat and Kill and local farmers, but we've got lots of materials coming because we have access to all these cool materials, and we have to buy them in big lots. So we want to use these, and we think that other people should be using them as well if they want. They shouldn't be limited by only being able to buy like a pound or two at a time. So we've also got currently dyeing right below me lots of new materials that we're going to launch sometime, hopefully this late summer, early fall.
Oh, wonderful. Well, if anyone goes to your website, and I encourage you all to do that, you will see the idea of, lift salt ships, because, and I mentioned this when I interviewed Keegan, is that your website is very giving. You give a lot of information. You give a shout out to, farmers. You tell them where they can get, you want to get your fleece process, go here. So your website really does support the whole community. I just think that's wonderful that you all do that. That's great.
Yeah, and the other thing that we do is we work because of our relationship with Bat and Kill, and we've now got a few other mills that we work with. We can talk to the customer, like to our customer, like a farm, say, or somebody who has a flock, and we can go from there to the mill, and we can say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make blankets. We want the yarn to be spec'd in this way. So we can also help the farms and people who don't really understand how it is they need to talk to, or what, that's not what I mean. Verbiage, like what kind of verbiage they should use to get the product that they want from the mill. We can do that now. So we are always offering that to anyone who comes to us, wants to work with us or anything. We're happy to be a contact or in between or whatever you want on the call as well with the mill, so that really we end up getting the kind of quality product that we set out for in the beginning without like confusion between us and the farmer and the mill, and then we don't get exactly what we want, and then it's not quite what we promised, and it's difficult. I mean, it's a complicated supply chain, and there's a lot of processes that the material goes through, say from the sheep to the finished product.
Well, I cannot believe it, but we have to stop.
Oh man,
I know, this is great, and let's just keep talking. I do want to thank you so much for being on the show today, Eric. It's great talking to you, and I feel like the one thing that's neat, and you've seen this too in your podcast, is talking to people and just seeing fiber from a different point of view. And your point of view is really nice. I like it. Thank you so much for being on here.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled and happy to have been invited. And yeah, I think that this program is great. Anything anyone can do to raise the profile of weavers, I am 100% behind.
Yes, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I could lend a little bit of my knowledge and information to this just makes me so happy.
I know, that's great. Well, I do want to thank you. And I also want to thank your guild. Also here, I'm jumping ahead here. People were asking about your website. It's comfortclothweaving.com. So y'all keep an eye, go check out the website now, and then just keep checking back, and you'll see his gorgeous yarns there for sale. But there's all kinds of information. They've got a great video of Eric weaving, which I loved. So go check out his website at comfortclothweaving.com. And I do want to thank our sponsor, Hudson Mohawk Weavers Guild up in New York area. Go check out their website, and they are a vital growing guild, and I encourage you to go look at their website and see what all they're doing. And they are hmwg.org. Thank you, Hudson Mohawk. We appreciate you doing this. If you would like to be a sponsor, Please join us. You can go online and sign up for an episode. You can email me if you have a suggestion of somebody you would like to sponsor. And please do that at weavespindye.org. If you would like to support HGA, you can do it by being a sponsor. Also, keep in mind that a lot of these programming that we do, whether it's Textiles and Tea, Spinning and Weaving Week, all these different programming we've been adding is done through your generous donations to the Fiber Trust. So if you want to join, or if you want to donate, or if you want to do both, please do so at weavespindye.org. We're very excited that next week we have Concepcion Theron. We're excited to interview her. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. But I do want to say thank you to everybody who came to Convergence. It was so great to be together, wasn't it? Just so good to see everybody and to learn in person. And I got suggestions from people about Textiles and Tea. Y'all said very kind things to HGA about the programming and about the work we're doing, and we appreciate that. It was an incredible week. I posted on Facebook, what did you like? I hope more of you will send in your information about what you liked. And when Eric just posted that if you didn't get your questions answered, because we didn't get to all the questions, please go to his website. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you doing that. And I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday. And remember, happy tea.